How to donate effectively. That's our topic for today. So, we're coming up to the holiday season and New Year's, and, it's a time when you can kind of reflect on your life and think, like we're going through life, but what difference are we actually making? And so, it's time to think more, introspectively, and in addition to partying. So, I talk a lot about money and financial planning, but it's not really about the money itself. It's about what it does for you in your life. It's living well and retiring comfortably, but also it can be, if you want it to be, how to donate effectively and how to make a difference in the world. So I thought I would talk about that today. So what we're going to talk about is, how do most people donate? What is a donation plan and how does it benefit you? How to donate tax efficiently. I have some advanced donation tax strategies, which I'm going to go through, which are kind of interesting. How do you decide where to donate? How do billionaires donate? And what are the most effective charities or causes? So that's our topic for today. So first, how do most people donate? Now, so interesting is, Canadians are actually donating quite a bit less now than they did 10 years ago. And a lot of that is understandable. It's cost of living, inflation, the high cost of housing. So it's just, life is more expensive in many ways. So we need our donations to be effective. We don't have unlimited money. So we need the dollars that we donate to be efficient. So that's part of why I'm looking into this. So now, I've done thousands and thousands of tax returns, and interestingly, there's some, extraordinarily generous people. However, most people with their tax returns, they have 5 or 10 slips for $20 or $100, and basically it was some telemarketer or someone showed up at the door and asked them for a bit, that they just give a little here or give a little bit there, and maybe there's a couple things that family members are doing, but when I ask them, so how do you feel about the donations that you've given, and most of the time they find, they're not really that rewarding. They're kind of a method to get rid of a telemarketer, but they didn't really do something that that made them feel good about what they did. So, so I think the answer to this is called a donation plan. It's something that my wife and I have done for many years, and I found to be, it makes a big difference. You can use the same amount of money, but in a much more effective way. And so what a donation plan is, you sit down once and you decide on a small number of causes, ideally, 1, 2, 3 causes that are important to you, and then you donate a much larger amount to that. So instead of giving, $50 to 10 different places, give $500 to one place, or something like that, or a 500, 1,000. So pick a cause, or just a small number of causes that are important to you for whatever reason. Give them a larger amount. Okay, you probably still have a few small ones at family or friend. Your kids are in a school thing. There's a few things that you probably want to do there. But other than that, you could pick a few that are important to you, and that actually gives you a feeling that you're actually making a difference, and you're giving it to something that you actually care about. And the good thing about it is you can then say no to all the telemarketers. So that's what I've been doing for years. Everybody that phones up, I say no. And of course, when they say no, they always say, well, what about a smaller amount? No, I said, no, we have a donation plan. We've already decided where we're giving our money. That's where we're doing it. Unfortunately, your cause is not the one. So that's what we're doing. Okay, and then you can just say no to them all, and you can say it with conviction and without feeling guilty on yourself, and it's a great way to get rid of them all, and then have your money actually do something useful. So now, how do we do it tax efficiently? Now, there's a few basic things. This is just kind of the basic income tax about it, but a few things that you should know. So first of all, to be deductible, a charity needs a registered charity number. And the way the number is, there's 9 numbers, then RR, and then 00000001. Okay, so anytime you get a receipt, it's got to have that on it to be deductible. Okay, and if you donate to a non-Canadian charity, what you can always ask them is, do they have a Canadian affiliate? Because a lot of times they do, and when you need a Canadian slip, if you ever want to be able to deduct it. Now, the deduction is actually quite interesting, because it's not a tax deduction. It doesn't reduce your taxable income. It's a tax credit, and it's not refundable, which means if you don't actually pay any tax, We have some clients that are just super tax efficient, even with large accounts. They don't end up paying any tax. Then you don't get any donations, deductions in. But generally, it's so the first $200 you get a small deduction. It's based on the lowest bracket, 20%, and then above $200 you get it based on the highest bracket, which is usually 40 to 50%. So the highest tax bracket, and then to the extent that you're paying income at the 54% bracket, so over 50, so that means to the extent you get income over 220,000, you get back 54%. So that's the tax credit that you get. So you notice the effect here is, I've seen some people that are giving 200, like they're giving $20 to 10 different places. Well, it's only $200, so it's all of the small, some lowest level. What they're better off doing is carry them forward for a few years and deduct 5 years at once or something. Then you get most of it at the 50% bracket, instead of the 20% bracket. So also you claim you can split them, but it's most effective to have all of it on one spouse, because then the $200 only, the low rate only applies to one spouse. So and generally you claim it on the higher income spouse, right? Medical is usually on the low income, donations on the high income. So the maximum is 75% of your net income. So might be a factor. And in the year of death, it can be up to 100%. So it can be a higher amount that year. And the year of death, you might have a high income that year because of RSPs and things and capital gains and things. So that is a year you can always leave quite a bit more, and you can carry them forward up to 5 years. So even though you've made the donations, you don't necessarily have to claim them that year. So there's a bit of planning that can be done. So that's a bit of the being tax efficient with them. Okay, so here's the donation tax credit you get by province actually varies quite a bit by province. So, and it's pretty complex how they actually do it. So what I'm showing you, there's all the different rates and different amounts. But so the first column here is how much you get back from the first $20, first $200 you don't donate, and then the next is how much you get from the next 1,000 to give you a percentage. So now, unfortunately, I'm from Ontario, and what you notice here has the lowest donation credit of them all. So, but you get a general picture. So you're getting about 20% of your first $200, and the next after that, it's 40 to 50% of it that you get back. Now, there's some advanced donation strategies. So these are kind of cool. So you can donate investments in kind. So instead of selling the investment, you just donate your actual stocks or your actual mutual funds. And what do you get there? It's actually kind of cool. What happens is you don't have to pay the capital gain on it. Plus, you get the tax credit. So let's say I don't know, you bought some mutual fund at you put 10,000 in, it's now worth 100,000. Okay, so there's a $90,000 gain on it. So if you sell it, you got tax on this $90,000 capital gain. However, if you donate the 100,000 amount, the whole gain you don't have to claim. Plus, you get your tax credit, 40 or 50% tax credit. So you could get, for example, a $40,000 or $50,000 refund instead of paying 20,000 tax. So it's a really generous way to do it. So if you've got investments that you've held for quite a few years with a really big capital gain on it, and then you want to do a sizable donation, it's a really effective way to be able to do it. Another thing you can do is you can donate your RSP or RIF withdrawals. So we have some clients that are just actually living comfortable enough they don't even need all their RIF withdrawals, so that they can donate them. But it's actually you can get a benefit from doing it if your retirement is tax efficient. You're taking money out of your RSP or RIF, and you're maybe only paying 20% tax on it. However, when you donate it, you get a 40 or 50% tax credit. So you're actually gaining on it, right? You take 10,000 out. I paid 2,000 tax, and I get saved 5,000 of tax. I'm up 3,000. So and I've donated $10,000, right? So it's an effective way to do it. So one good way that's often done or sometimes done is you can leave a large bequest in your final estate. So you could take your RSP or RIF and name a charity as a beneficiary. Or you can do it with an insurance policy. Now, it's rarely done with RSPs and RIFs because usually you want to name your spouse or possibly your kids once you if you don't have a spouse. So So, but these are things that you can do. Like if you have a huge RSP and you have no spouse, and you can actually leave it to your to a charity, and that way there isn't going to be a big tax bill on the withdrawal of it. So then the other thing that's actually really interesting. So it's called a donor advised fund, and really this is the ultimate status symbol. This is what the rich people or the movie stars, this is what they try to have. You have a charitable foundation in your name. So picture like your name, charitable foundation, right? And the cool thing about is you could put money in there, and this can last long after you're gone. 100 years after you're gone, your charity is still out there donating regularly, and so still leaving a legacy, still making a difference for where you want to do it. The other plus about this is that you can, when you put money into, so what happens is you put a bunch of money into this fund, and it stays invested. Okay, in some cases you can even have some input into how it's invested. So it's still, kind of part of your portfolio, and it stays invested. And then about 5% usually is a minimum. 5% has to come out of there and be donated every year, but you can pick your causes, and you can actually include your kids in it, as as a way to educate them about finance. But or it can be a nice family thing. They're all part of the board, and then but then you got to name who's going to continue to choose a charity, or you can just pick a certain charity and they keep donating about it. And the interesting thing about it is, instead of telling a charity, okay, we're going to give you $10,000, you can tell a charity, we're going to give you 5,000 per year forever. So they can actually start a program and build something based on that. So a donor advised fund is actually a really interesting way to do it. So it's sometimes a good to, if you have for some reason a really high tax year, you got a massive bonus, or sold a company, or you have a huge capital gain, or something. You have some really big tax year. That's often a good year to be able to do it. And there are some creative strategies for making your donation a lot bigger. And they can, for example, make your donation 10 times the size of what you. So you put in 100,000, but it actually ends up being $1 million donation after tax. Like a million goes in after you get the tax refund. It's still only costs you 10,000. Okay, so I'm probably going to do a future video on this. It's a more complicated topic, but that is sometimes when you see the hospitals and people have donated 50 million to something, that's often what they did is they only put 5 million of their money in, and they've used these creative investment strategies. So those are kind of some advanced tax things. So that's the tax part of it. Now, so how do you decide where to donate? So, if you're going to have a donation plan, find something that you actually care about. So, and it could be something that affects you personally, or someone that could be a disease that a person important to you died of, or something that's in your family history. So, I had my entire genome mapped. So what's interesting is I had thought most of my life that there was a large history of cancer in my family, and so that was always a big issue for me. And now, actually, when I'm going through all the family with my mother, I finally realized it's actually way less than I had thought it was. And from mapping my genome, I have no predisposition to it, or any of the diseases. So surprise. So it's actually a good surprise. But if you find that you have a predisposition, you think, wow, I'm going to die. There's a higher chance that I'm going to die of this disease. Why don't I donate to that one? So especially to maybe research. To me, for me personally, I always prefer donating to research as opposed to just ongoing care or something. So and that could be a local cause, some local thing that you're concerned about, but it also could be something global. And to me, a big one is poverty. When you start reading about all the poor people in the world, there's 3 billion people that still live on less than $10 a day. And so that is actually down quite a bit. Like used to be 3 billion that lives on less than $2 a day. Now it's $10 a day. So, but it's really, when you read about their lives, it's still really quite sad. It's something where we can make a big difference. So anyway, you can pick a cause that matters to you. And then, or you can just do some research on what the most effective cause is. And I did some here. I'm going to show you some possible. I did some research on it. You can use it to get some ideas on it. And so, in the end, if you're going to donate some money, like, do it in a way where you get a good feeling about it, and you're actually making a difference in the world. Let's make the world a better place. So now, what do billionaires do? So it's interesting. There's this thing called the Giving Pledge, and yeah, it is, for wealthy people, basically for billionaires to pledge that they will donate the bulk of their estate, meaning more than half of their estate, to charity. And now that's not binding. They're just publicly pledging. But if you publicly pledge it and then don't do it, that's if you're doing this to create an image, that's not how you create your image. So, but and it's also, basically it's a movement to encourage wealthy people to to give more, to be more involved in philanthropy. And it's a bit of a philosophy thing, because a lot of wealthy people used to think it's intergenerational wealth. I've got my billions, I got to pass on to my kids, they're all going to be billionaires, it's going to stay, we're going to have this family dynasty. But we've had some people, like for example, Warren Buffett says it's un-American to inherit money. Like, the American thing is to be self-directed, and ready, you build up your own money. And so if you get too much, if your kids get too much money, there's a lot of sign of that the kids of wealthy people very often do very little, because they're already wealthy, so they don't usually accomplish a lot. So so there is something that's kind of un-American to just inherit money. So um so now Warren Buffett is actually kind of interesting. So his line for his kids, by the way, is he wants to give his kids enough money so that they can do anything, but not enough so they can do nothing. And I think he has a great way of saying things in a smart way. And I think that's a smart way to be able to do it. So now there's 230 people that have billionaires have signed this in 228 countries. And sorry, it's 28 countries, not 228. Bill and Melinda Gates are in there. Their foundation, I think, is doing a lot. And interestingly, Warren Buffett, one of the guys I admire, he's pledged 99% of his wealth. Now his kids are still going to be okay off because he's wealthy enough, but he's actually, he's basically giving it all to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So, he's, kind of being a business guy, knows how to actually make a difference, how to do things so that they actually work, and measure the difference that you do. So anyway, but that's what this Giving Pledge is kind of neat. You can just Google it and see who's all, they show you all the people that are on it. It's kind of interesting. So, a move towards more philanthropy. Now, so what are the most effective causes? Now, I'm not going to tell you where to go, but I thought, okay, let's do some research. How do we find out? How do we get some ideas of what might be some good ones? So, now, one thing that people often do is they just look at like, so how much of the money that goes to the charity is just administration and fundraising, right? I don't want to pay for their office, here in Canada. I want to pay for the cause that we're doing, and some of them spend a lot on fundraising. So you know what? So I'm an accountant, so I just pull up their financial statements. Most of them have them online, or you can ask the charity for the financial statements and go through it. Look at the expenses, like how much of it is administration, how much is fundraising. So they're required to disclose it, and if they don't disclose it, then I would take that as a bad sign. So then you can kind of see how much, is it. Most of them, like, there's always going to be some cost, and some work entirely on volunteers, but sometimes if you want to have the more talented people, you do have to pay them something, or especially if you're going causes overseas, there's expenses. So like a lot, if you have 10% or something, 10 or 15% or less is administration and fundraising, that's actually pretty good. So then there are ratings where you can actually have them rated. So one of them that I found is called Charity Intelligence Canada, and you can find them online. They have the top 10 or the top 100 charity impact ratings, and so this is the next level. The first level is how much money goes to overhead and that. The next level is how much of an impact are they actually making with what they're doing. And to me, it's always a matter of it's results. When you give money to something, you want to measure what the result is. How much difference does that actually make? And so they try to measure that. So there's also really interesting is the Copenhagen consensus. It's the first time I've actually seen this done. It was done by a bunch of top Nobel laureates, and they looked at causes all over the world, and they tried to see which ones make the biggest difference. And what they do is they measured the like. So what is the cost, and then what is the benefit? So how does it relate to the cost? So and so they took like, they don't take, for example, specifically poverty, global poverty. They would look at a very specific thing, like what are the possible actions that we can do, and what if we did this? How much difference would that cost, and how much difference would it make? And they tried to set very realistic goals. Like sometimes when these big UN based things, they set a goal, we want to eliminate a disease. Well, problem is, if you want to get 100% improvement, then you're focusing on all the little ones. It's much more effective to say we're going to get a 50 or a 75% improvement, because then you just focus on the easier ones where you make most of the difference, and usually the cost is a lot less to get 75% versus trying to get 100% of something. And it's like the UN often sets, like they set goals that are more grandstanding. We're going to have this massive effect, but they try to set realistic goals, something that could actually be done. So yeah, so the first level is how much is spent on the cause, versus administration and fundraising. Second level is how much of a difference does it make? So now I have this book. I think it's a really good book that I would recommend here. It's called The Smartest Targets for the World. It's from one of my favorite writers, Bjorn Lomborg, and he actually goes through this in detail. Went through all these different causes and specific actions on them, and they measure which ones make the biggest difference. So rather than going through all of them, I thought, okay, let's just look at some of the top ones. I'll show you that in just a minute. So now this is the Canadian impact, the impact study that's in Canada. And so these are Canadian charities, local, and these are the ones that they rated as making the most that are the most effective in Canada. So here you see a few that you could look at, and these are all online. And these are the international ones. So, and they're listed, the top 10 listed alphabetically. So not just from, not by most valuable, but these are the ones that they rated as making the highest impact in the world. So now the Copenhagen consensus, so it's all these panel of Nobel laureates. So now the targets that would make the biggest effect, most effective, where for every dollar spent, the benefit is 15 times or more that amount. So these are again, you can find these online by just Google the Copenhagen consensus. So here are some of the ones, and that made the biggest difference. I'm just trying to show you this to give you some ideas. So lower chronic child malnutrition by 40%. It's actually interesting reading this because to understand what they are. So providing nutritional supplements, deworming and improving the balance of diet for 0 to 2-year-olds will cost 11 billion, but prevent 68 million children from being malnourished. So see, that's a big effect there. Malaria. So malaria and tuberculosis are two of them. So we just went through a COVID pandemic, but there are other pandemics happening that have been happening for years. They're happening constantly, and so tuberculosis used to be one of the big killers, even in Western countries, but we've basically wiped it out. However, in poor countries, it's still a huge killer. So, and same with malaria. So malaria, it's mosquitoes, right? So distributing a long-lasting insecticide-treated bed nets. So it's these good bed nets, delaying resistance to the malaria drug. There's a special drug that deals with it, and it'll cost about 0.6 billion, so 600 million, prevent 100 million cases of malaria, save 40,000 lives. So there's a really effective one. Tuberculosis, so reduce it by deaths by 90%, again, right, not 100. Massively scaling up the detection and treatment of tuberculosis will cost 8 billion and save 1.3 million lives per year. So Really good one. So now cut early deaths from chronic disease by a third. So these are chronic diseases. So raising the price of tobacco, administering aspirin. So the baby aspirin is really effective for most people to take. It's possibly the best supplement. And preventative therapy for heart disease, reducing salt intake, and providing low-cost blood pressure medicine will cost $9 billion and save 5 million lives per year. Now, in Western and wealthy countries, this is kind of routinely done by doctors, but in poor countries, much of this is not available. So avoid 1.1 million HIV infections through circumcision. Interesting if that's what it is. You wouldn't have maybe thought circumcision was a top thing, but circumcising 90% of HIV negative men in the 5 worst affected countries will cost 35 million annually and avert 1.1 million infections by 2030, with preventative benefit increasing over time. So then there's reduced newborn mortality by 70%. So, in poorer countries, there's still lots of babies that die, very young. So protecting expectant mothers from disease, having skilled medical staff support their deliveries, and ensuring high quality postnatal care will cost 14 billion and prevent 2 million newborn deaths per year. So wow, 2 million deaths you could save. 14 billion, something may sound like it is a big number, but here in Canada, like that's a number, like we have quite a few programs that cost that much, and yet it could save 2 million lives. So now increase immunization to reduce child deaths by 25%. Now it's interesting. So we've one of the hot buttons lately in Canada has been vaccines, and this is not specific to COVID. This is for a few other specific diseases, but they actually work. So the thing about vaccines is they're cheap and they save lives. You can save a life for $1 or $10. So expanding immunization coverage to include protection from forms of influenza, pneumonia, and diarrhea. Believe it or not, these are big things, because a lot of them, they don't have clean drinking water. So diarrhea is a big thing. So a cost of $1 billion can save 1 million children per year. So now make family planning available to everyone. So allowing women to decide if, when, and how they become pregnant will cost 3.6 billion a year and cut maternal deaths by 150,000, while providing a demographic dividend. So getting more young people. This is allowing women to choose, to be able to decide if and when they want to have children. So because it can actually be a problem if no family planning, and you have kids, but you can't support them in poor countries. That's part of what the cycle of poverty. So eliminate violence against women and girls. Right now, every year, 305 million women are domestically abused, costing the world 4.4 trillion in damages. So these are the areas for people that they thought the most valuable. Then planet-wise, there's phase out fossil fuel subsidies. Now, this is not what they talk about here in the news in Canada. It's not. There's basically nothing in Canada, but these are the ones. Like it's mostly, especially Middle Eastern countries. Some countries there, the government heavily subsidize gasoline, so it's cheap for people to drive around. Now, of course, people with cars in these countries are mostly the wealthy. So subsidizing that, like generally subsidizing forms of energy, is a negative for us. We should let the market decide and just focus on research. So removing fossil fuel subsidies will cost less than 37 billion per year, reduce lower carbon emissions, and free up 548 billion in government revenue to spend on other things like health and infrastructure and education. So it's a way to spend the money in a more effective way. So have coral reef loss. So protecting marine habitats will cost 3 billion per year, but will prevent the loss of 3 million hectares of coral reef, providing natural fishing hatcheries and boosting tourism. So this is something we can focus specifically on coral reefs and keep them alive. So tax pollution damage from energy. So this, of course, is carbon tax or something like that. So that's probably the single most effective thing that can be done against carbon emissions. So and also air pollution, which is still an issue in other parts of the world. So air pollution is the world's biggest environmental killer, causing more than 7 million annual deaths. Taxes proportional to the damage from air pollution and CO2 will reduce environmental impacts efficiently. So now, so this is, spreading it, this kind of tax all over the world. So now another huge one that most of us here don't realize is indoor air pollution. So cut indoor air pollution by 20%. So, 3 billion people in the world, one third of all humans, or a bit more, have basically little or no energy, no power, no electricity. So they heat their homes and they do their cooking by burning wood. They go gather wood, or they burn animal dung, believe it or not, in these little cheap stoves, and you get indoor air pollution, and it's actually kills millions of people per year. So here, providing more clean cook stoves will cost 11 billion and prevent 1.3 million deaths per year from indoor air pollution. So all this it's one of the biggest things we can do to help in poverty is just give them a more efficient stove to burn some wood in, so that reduces the amount of pollution that they get. So reducing indoor air pollution, believe it or not, the single biggest killer of women and girls in India. So it affects mostly women and girls who tend to be in the home much more. So it gives you a sense of what the life is in poor countries. Then prosperity-wise, I'm a financial guy. I'm always looking to see how do we, increase the prosperity of all humans. So, and of course, okay, now these are economists that put this together, but by far the biggest benefit is free trade. Okay, so they reduced the trade restriction. So 20 years ago, there was this Doha agreement, the Doha round, that was, basically about the highest level of free trade. So achieve more free trade would make each person in the developing world $1,000 richer by 2030, lifting 160 million people out of extreme poverty at a cost of 20 billion per year. So, the number of people that we've had the last 40 years, and even the last 20 years, have had the biggest reduction in global poverty ever. And the biggest reason for it is not governments and charities. The biggest one is free trade. So we've been buying a lot from, like, the biggest increase has been in China. We're buying all kinds of products from people in China. And then what happens is these people that are subsistence rice farmers are moving into the city, getting factory jobs. Not ideal, but it's a rung in the ladder of moving towards middle class. And that's been the biggest rise out of poverty in the last few decades. So free trade is actually a really big thing. So improve gender equality in ownership, business, and politics. So ensuring women can own and inherit property, perform basic business needs like signing a contract, and be represented in parliament will empower women. So again, we're talking about certain countries where this is like not an issue in Western countries. Like most of these issues are in poorer countries, and it's going there and trying to make a difference. And some of these are, it's not necessarily we would kind of think of what charity would do this. So you got to do some research to find charities that will do these. But some of this is actually government, because often it's the governments that are preventing things like that. But in a lot of poor countries, the governments will basically do whatever they're bribed to do, or whatever they're given money to be able to do. So a lot can be done, by influencing the governments in different countries. And often you can't just give it to them, because there's a lot of corruption. You actually have to have charities that have somebody on the ground measuring the effect. So boost agricultural yield by 40%. So this is a really cool thing. Investing in an extra 2.5 billion per year in agriculture R&D to boost yields and reduce food prices for poor people, mean 80 million fewer people go hungry, and provide benefits for that worth 84 billion. So this is research into new types of seeds that can grow in different environments, so they get higher yields, or and even as the world's warming, have seeds that can grow in dry areas or higher heat. This is actually one of the most effective ways to make a difference for that. And we think in rich countries, we tend not to think about people going hungry, but that's still a huge thing for billions of people in the world. So increase girls' education by 2 years, ensuring girls receive more education and will increase their future wages, improve their health, reduce the risk of violence, and start a virtuous cycle for the next generation. So education is a big thing. You know what? And when kids are educated, when they start thinking, they learn to think, and they become more effective through life. So it's important to start young. Achieve universal primary education in sub-Saharan Africa at a cost of $9 billion per year. The target will ensure 30 million more kids per year attend primary school, and triple the preschool in sub-Saharan Africa. Preschool instills for the children a long life desire to learn, ensuring preschool coverage rises from 18% to 59%, will cost up to $6 billion, but will give that experience to at least 30 million more children per year. So, all right, so here's a few things that will actually make a really big difference. So now all of those are actually in this book, and they explain them much more, what's behind them and why those work. And also, while other causes that you may have thought would be on that list are not. So, and in fact, like the big topic here in Canada lately has been climate. And the biggest effect, where you get the biggest effect in climate, actually, believe it or not, is research. It's researching into new technologies, and because we talk about a lot about electricity here, but I read Bill Gates's book on climate, showing all the complexities. And, electricity is the 10% easiest part of reducing carbon emissions. The harder one is concrete and steel and ships and airplanes. So research is the big thing. Now, it didn't make this list because apparently it's the estimated benefit is $11 for every dollar spent. And these are the ones that are 15 or more, but that's the big one in that area. So I thought I'd mention that because that's one of the topics that we talk about a lot now, and yet did not make the list of the top places that make the biggest that are most effective use of your money. So again, these are the things that we talked about here in this video. So, and again, so my name is Ed Rempel. My blog is Unconventional Wisdom. It's the #1 blog in Canada for a financial planner, and it's edrempel.com. And if you're considering, if you want interested in being potentially being a client of ours, best way to do it, just go to the blog, hit contact, and you can ask for a free 30-minute consultation. This is a no pressure thing. What we're trying to do is you'll talk to one of our planners and just kind of see what is it that you're trying to do, and we'll tell you what we do, and we'll see whether or not we're a fit to be able to work together. We only want to work together with the people, again, where we're making the biggest difference in your life. So I have my blog, Ed Rempel. If you subscribe to it, or my YouTube channel, all that means is my videos and articles will go directly to your email every week. I try to do a video or an article every Thursday. So thanks a lot for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.